The town lay in a state of desolation, an uneven expanse of cracked earth and withered crops that stretched as far as the eye could see. Once vibrant and alive, the streets now echoed with an oppressive silence, broken only by the whispering winds that stirred up the dust. Shutters hung askew and buildings sagged under the weight of despair, their paint peeling like the spirits of the townsfolk who had long since given up hope. On what was once a bustling main street, a few figures wandered aimlessly. Their faces were etched in lines of worry, reflecting the anguish that had settled over them like a thick fog. Eyes dulled by sorrow gazed into the distance, searching for signs of life in a land that had grown cruel. The drought had come like a thief in the night, stealing not only their crops but also their livelihood and joy. Cattle once grazed freely on lush pastures, now they were mere memories, leaving behind skeletal remains scattered across parched fields. As villagers went about their daily struggles, bartering stale bread for water or gathering around flickering lanterns at night, the heavy air was thick with unspoken grief. Families mourned not just for lost loved ones to disease, but also for dreams abandoned under the relentless sun. Children who once laughed and played now seemed like shadows flitting through dusty alleys, their laughter silenced by the harsh reality surrounding them. Amidst this stillness, a deep sense of hopelessness gripped every heart, binding them together in shared despair. The church at the end of Main Street stood as a solitary sentinel against the decay of faith, its steeple reached toward a sky that refused to weep for its people. The preacher who once inspired hope was gone, leaving behind only echoes of forgotten sermons that faded into whispers on the wind. But even amid such bleakness, there remained an ember of resilience buried deep within each soul, a longing for salvation that coursed through their veins like an unyielding current. Little did they know that change was on the horizon, heralded not by storms or rain clouds, but by the arrival of one scarred man who would challenge everything they thought they knew about miracles and sacrifice. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ghost town, a solitary figure slowly emerged from the dust-laden road. The preacher walked with a purposeful gait, though his worn boots echoed the weight of burdens carried for far too long. His face, weathered and lined, bore scars that spoke of battles both physical and emotional, each mark a testament to trials faced in life's turbulent journey. His eyes, an unsettling blend of fervor and sorrow, surveyed the desolate surroundings. He had wandered into this forsaken place not by chance, but driven by an insatiable need to bring hope where despair reigned. A faint whisper in his heart urged him forward, guiding him toward those who had all but lost their faith in miracles. He sought redemption for himself as much as he sought to revive the dying spirits of those around him. As he stepped further into the town, he noted the way its inhabitants moved, slowly, almost as if weighted down by invisible chains. Their gazes were hollow, devoid of light, and yet there was something else, a flicker of curiosity mingled with caution. They watched him with wary eyes as he approached the church at the end of Main Street, its steeple looming like an unspoken promise against the crimson sky. The preacher felt their skepticism, it wrapped around him like a shroud. Some had certainly heard tales of wandering saviors before, the narratives that ended in disappointment or betrayal, but he hoped to be different. Nervous energy thrummed through him as he stood on the threshold of revitalizing their hope. Each step was a conscious effort to shake off his own doubts. His scars were reminders that trust could be shattered just as easily as it could be rebuilt. Gathering his resolve, he raised a hand in greeting, offering a tentative smile meant to bridge the chasm between them. Though they remained uncertain, there was an unspoken acknowledgement hanging in the air, a shared recognition of pain that perhaps could lead them toward healing. In that moment, beneath the weight of despair and loss, a fragile connection began to form between the scarred preacher and the weary souls longing for salvation. Little did they know how intertwined their fates would soon become. The days following the preacher's arrival were marked by a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the ghost town. It began with whispers among the townsfolk, who gathered at dusk with cautious optimism as they shared tales of unusual sightings. The first sign came when an old farmer, weary and sunken from endless toil, spotted a few cattle grazing cautiously near the edge of town. Skeptical at first, he rubbed his eyes, believing he was seeing a mirage born from the persistent heat. But as other villagers joined him, their disbelief turned to wonder. Real live cattle had returned after months of absence. Encouraged by this unexpected miracle, a group of children ventured into the fields where life had long been absent. To their astonishment, they discovered green shoots breaking through the cracked soil, defying the drought that had crippled their hopes. Laughter erupted as they danced among the fledgling crops, their joy reverberating through the town like a long-forgotten melody. The sight of vibrant greens amidst the desolation ignited a spark of hope in the hearts of even the most hardened skeptics. As word spread, a sense of urgency enveloped the community. Farmers rushed to their fields, digging eagerly to uncover any signs of life. The preacher watched from a distance, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and trepidation. He understood that these small miracles could either be seen as divine intervention or mere coincidence, yet he felt certain that something greater was at play. One evening, as twilight descended upon the town, dark clouds gathered overhead, a rare sight that sent shivers of anticipation through every soul. When rain began to fall, it was as if the heavens themselves had opened up to bless this beaten ground. The townsfolk gazed upward in awe, faces illuminated by the soft glow of hope rekindled. Yet beneath this veil of optimism lay a simmering tension. While some celebrated these newfound blessings as signs of salvation, others couldn't shake off their lingering doubts. Questions stirred within them. Was this truly divine grace or merely a fleeting illusion? And what price would they pay for these miraculous gifts? The preacher's presence had changed their reality, but uncertainty loomed like storm clouds on the horizon, casting shadows over their fragile joy. As the miraculous changes unfolded in the town, reactions among the villagers began to diverge sharply. In the heart of the community, a palpable tension simmered, with some individuals embracing the preacher as a vessel of hope while others remained firmly entrenched in skepticism. The divide became increasingly apparent during gatherings at the town square, where conversations sparked like dry tinder igniting. Some townsfolk, those long accustomed to sorrow, saw the preacher as a beacon of salvation. They spoke of his presence with reverence, attributing their newfound blessings directly to his arrival. Old Mrs. Thompson, a once bitter widow who had lost everything to disease, now found herself at the forefront of prayer meetings, advocating for the preacher's message and sharing tales of divine intervention. Her tears of pain transformed into tears of joy as she delighted in the return of life to her barren garden. Conversely, there were others, like Martha Hughes, the widow who had buried her 2 children in quick succession. With each tale of rejuvenation shared by her neighbors, doubt coiled tighter around her heart. She attended those same gatherings but often stood silent among the throng, her dark curls framing a face that was hardened by grief and marked by loss. To her, miracles felt like cruel tricks played by fate. She feared that behind every blessing lay an unseen curse. Each smile exchanged among her neighbors only deepened her isolation. With murmurs circulating about whether this revival was authentic or merely coincidence, heated debates erupted among old friends turned foes. "You can't believe in a savior who simply appears out of nowhere," argued Jack Miller, a local farmer whose scant crops had miraculously flourished against all odds. "Faith can move mountains," countered Mrs. Thompson fervently. This rift in opinion opened old wounds within the community, a community already fragile from years of hardship and loss. Friends divided over faith versus skepticism, tempers flared, and alliances shifted like shifting sands as each villager grappled with their understanding of what it meant to hope again. Amidst this backdrop, the scarred preacher remained unaware of how deeply his influence was engendering conflict. He wandered through the town streets absorbing both gratitude and trepidation. He recognized that healing would take far more than miraculous events. It would require hearts willing to forgive and trust one another again. As shadows danced along the walls of decrepit buildings, he pondered how best to bridge this widening divide before it threatened to tear apart what little unity remained. Martha Hughes stood at the threshold of her empty home, the fading daylight casting long shadows that intertwined with the silence of her sorrow. The once vibrant laughter of her 2 children echoed in her mind, haunting her with every crack in the walls and dust on the floor. Their absence was a gaping chasm in her heart, filled only by memories of joy now tainted by loss. The village had become a ghostly reminder of what she had lost, and Martha found herself tethered to grief, unable to shake the weight it imposed upon her soul. As whispers of the preacher's miracles filled the air, Martha felt a surge of skepticism rise within her. How could anyone bring back what she had lost? Her children's lives could not be restored through mere words or fleeting miracles, and she was determined not to let hope creep into her heart unchallenged. In the midst of a community swaying between faith and doubt, her resolve solidified into resistance. She would uncover the truth behind this man and discern whether he was indeed a harbinger of salvation or merely a charlatan cloaked in compassion. The townsfolk rallied around the preacher, clinging to stories of renewed life and blessings granted upon their barren land. Yet while they celebrated, Martha felt only isolation deepen around her. In conversations overheard at market stalls and during prayer meetings, she remained an observer, her expression stoic as others extolled the preacher's virtues. To them, he was a miracle worker. To Martha, he was an unwelcome specter stirring false hopes. Fueled by determination, she resolved to confront him directly. With each day that passed as cattle returned and crops sprung forth from the once barren ground, her doubts festered into urgency. She began to gather information about his past, his scars that whispered secrets and his transient nature that left her unsettled. What shadows trailed him? What price must they pay for these sudden blessings? As night fell over the town and stars twinkled above like distant promises unfulfilled, Martha vowed to seek answers that lay obscured by this newfound light. She would peel back layers of faith to reveal any dark truths hidden beneath them. Only through understanding could she ensure that hope would no longer be something to fear, but perhaps something worth embracing again, though she wondered if it would ever be truly safe for someone like her. As the miracles in the town continued to multiply, an unsettling aura began to encircle the preacher's presence. The air thickened with expectancy, but along with the rebirth of crops and livestock, strange occurrences stirred a growing sense of unease among the villagers. It started with shadows that flickered unnaturally at night, darting across the periphery of their vision, as if something unseen were watching them from the darkness. Martha Hughes found herself unable to dismiss these phenomena any longer. One evening, drawn by an inexplicable compulsion, she ventured outside her home, the moon casting an ethereal glow over the landscape. As she walked down the once familiar path, she felt a chilling breeze brush past her, a whisper that seemed to murmur her name. The stillness was punctuated by distant echoes that resonated in her mind, a cacophony of voices just beyond comprehension. Even more alarming were the accounts shared among her neighbors at twilight gatherings. Some claimed to have seen figures moving restlessly at the edge of their fields, while others spoke of hearing hushed conversations wafting through the night air as they lay in bed. These unsettling reports ignited fresh fuel for Martha's skepticism. She could not ignore that in tandem with life returning to their land came something darker, an undercurrent that felt both foreign and dangerously familiar. Determined to uncover what lay hidden beneath the surface of this newfound hope, Martha spent each day gathering stories and piecing together fragments of whispered fears. In conversations with fellow villagers, she gleaned subtle hints, shadows that lingered too long in corners, unrecognizable faces seen fleetingly in the gloaming light, and even sightings of animals behaving oddly as if entranced by a force beyond comprehension. As Martha delved deeper into the mystery surrounding the preacher's influence on their lives, she could feel an urgency swell within her. Each encounter with townsfolk laid bare their fears, a collective anxiety bubbling under their hopeful facade, and she knew that exposing the truth behind these miracles was more critical than ever. With every day that passed and each peculiar event that transpired, Martha steeled herself further for a confrontation with the preacher. She needed answers, not just for herself, but for all those who had become ensnared in this web of miraculous blessings tinged with shadows. As nighttime descended once more over the ghost town, her resolve crystallized. She would unveil whatever lay hidden behind his enigmatic facade before it led them all into darkness from which they might never emerge. Martha Hughes set out on her investigative journey with a fierce determination to uncover the truth about the scarred preacher and the miraculous events unfolding in the town. Each step she took was fueled by a blend of skepticism and desperation, as she sought to piece together the fragments of his past that might illuminate the shadows surrounding his arrival. Her first stop was the local tavern, where villagers gathered to share stories over mugs of ale. The air was thick with laughter and camaraderie, but Martha's presence turned heads as whispers trailed behind her. She approached Old Tom, a grizzled man known for his long memory and sharp tongue. Slumped over his drink, he eyed her warily before reluctantly divulging snippets of gossip he'd heard. "The preacher's not from around here," he muttered, his voice low. "Came from somewhere far off, a place where darkness lingers." His words echoed in Martha's mind like a warning bell. Intrigued yet unsettled, she sought out others who had crossed paths with him. A young woman named Clara, who had recently been swept up in fervent prayers led by the preacher, shared her own experience. He spoke of redemption, Clara said, her eyes bright with belief. However, when pressed about his past, she hesitated. They say he carries burdens, his own sins haunt him like ghosts. This revelation sent shivers down Martha's spine. She wondered what kind of man could inspire both hope and fear. As days turned into nights filled with restless sleep, Martha continued her quest, piecing together an intricate tapestry of rumors and half-truths. She learned that several townsfolk had experienced vivid dreams after the preacher's arrival, dreams filled with visions of their lost loved ones or cryptic warnings about impending doom. It was during one such encounter with an elderly couple that she began to connect dots between these dreams and darker omens whispered among children playing near abandoned buildings. Determined to confront the preacher directly, Martha compiled her findings into a small notebook, each entry tinged with urgency and doubt. She felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier on her shoulders. If there was truth to be discovered behind this enigmatic figure, it was up to her to unveil it before it consumed them all. With each passing day filled with new revelations and unsettling encounters, Martha steeled herself for what lay ahead. She would not rest until she uncovered the secrets entwined within the preacher's past, not only for herself but for all those who dared to believe that hope could rise from despair without consequence. As twilight descended once more over the town, casting long shadows across her path, she knew that confronting him would be a matter of life and death, not just for her but for everyone who called this ghost town home. The day had finally come for Martha to confront the preacher, a moment she had both anticipated and dreaded. As dusk settled over the ghost town, casting a blue hue on the familiar landscape, she approached him with a mixture of resolve and trepidation. The preacher stood near the edge of the churchyard, framed by the fading light, his scarred face illuminated in a way that accentuated both his strength and vulnerability. "Martha," he greeted her softly, his voice smooth yet tinged with fatigue. "What troubles you?" She took a deep breath, struggling against the turmoil within. "You know very well what troubles me," she shot back, her voice steady but her heart racing. "People are saying things, they've seen shadows and heard whispers since you came. You promised them miracles, but what are you really offering?" The preacher's expression shifted, sadness touched his eyes. "Miracles can come with burdens, I know this all too well, but they are real and they bring hope to a place lost in despair." "Hope?" Martha echoed bitterly. "Hope doesn't bring back the dead. My children can't be resurrected by your so-called faith. Don't you understand what you're asking of us?" Tension crackled between them as both revealed their scars, Martha's raw grief intertwining with the preacher's own dark history. He confessed to leading a life marred by choices that haunted him still, each decision forged in desperation and regret. "I was once like you, broken and seeking redemption. Those I lost are my constant companions," he admitted, voice lowering as if sharing a secret. Martha's heart softened momentarily as she glimpsed the pain behind his words, but anger flared once more as she pressed on. "And yet here you are, stirring emotions among people who want to believe in something better. What if it all collapses? What price does faith demand?" "Faith demands honesty," he replied, stepping closer, his gaze intense. "And there's truth in pain. Without it, how can we truly understand ourselves or each other? I came here hoping to help rekindle what's been lost." Their eyes locked in that charged moment, vulnerabilities laid bare like wounds exposed to air, neither willing to back down from their convictions. The preacher was earnest, yet Martha saw the shadows clinging to him, the complexities of salvation wrapped in layers of doubt. As their conversation unfolded under the twinkling stars, both realized they were not so different. They wrestled with the same fears and desires for redemption, not just for themselves but for those they loved. Yet as hope mingled with skepticism, an uneasy alliance began to form between them, suggesting that perhaps understanding could pave the way for healing, if only they could navigate the darkness that lay ahead together. Days turned into restless nights as Martha delved deeper into the preacher's past, fueled by an unyielding determination to protect her community. She sought to uncover any hidden truths that linked him to the town's misery, prompting her to visit the local library, a dusty relic filled with forgotten tomes and whispers of history long pawed over by anxious hands. One afternoon, while sifting through faded newspaper archives, Martha stumbled upon a disturbing article buried within the brittle pages. It described a town much like hers, a once thriving community that had faced an inexplicable blight shortly after a traveling preacher arrived. The accounts detailed strange floods and the mysterious deaths that followed his stay, accusing him of conjuring darkness while promising salvation. Each line clawed at her insides, solidifying the connection she had feared existed between this preacher and the calamity befalling towns. Martha's gut churned with conflict as she shared this revelation with Clara, the young woman who had previously admired the preacher so fervently. Clara's expression shifted from hope to confusion, and then fear washed over her features. "Maybe we've invited something we can't control," she whispered, casting worried glances toward the church where the preacher often held prayer meetings. Fueled by newfound dread yet unwavering resolve, Martha chased down every villager linked to the preacher's arrival. Every testimony she gathered painted a darker picture. Shadows of regret danced across their faces when they spoke of friendships fraying under the weight of hope tainted by fear. The same threads, loss and longing, wove through their stories and connected them all to that enigmatic man. Determined not to allow her neighbor's goodwill to spiral into despair under false pretenses, Martha stood at a crucial crossroads. She knew she would have to confront the preacher again, but urgently questioned how far she was willing to go to protect her community from potential harm. With each unsettling truth uncovered, her heart weighed heavier with the realization that sacrifice was inevitable, either for herself or those she loved. As darkened clouds swirled above, reflecting her inner turmoil, Martha felt clarity emerge through the storm. If uncovering these truths meant exposing herself to danger or drawing divisive lines among her neighbors, so be it. The stakes were too high. This time she would lay everything bare before him, not just for redemption but for survival. Whatever might be lurking in his past could unleash consequences detrimental to all they held dear if left unchallenged. She steeled herself for what lay ahead, recognizing that true courage could only flourish through unwavering conviction in her search for truth. As the miraculous events in the town continued to unfold, a palpable unease settled over the community. The townspeople gathered at the dilapidated church for a meeting, their faces drawn with both hope and fear. The reverberating whispers of miraculous harvests and the return of cattle had ignited fervor, but beneath the surface lay an unspoken dread about the potential cost of these blessings. Martha stood at the edge of the gathering, her heart racing as she listened to the fervent voices arguing for and against the preacher's influence. "We've been given a second chance," asserted old Mr. Jenkins, his voice rising above the murmurs. "This is what we've prayed for. We must embrace this miracle." But others responded with caution, voices trembling in uncertainty. "What do we really know about him?" Clara interjected, her earlier admiration for the preacher now laced with doubt. "The shadows, the whispers, they're not just figments of our imagination. What if we are inviting destruction?" As discussions unfolded like the weathered pages of a book, the community split into factions. Some were willing to overlook the unsettling signs in exchange for hope, while others, including Martha, fell firmly on the side of skepticism. They debated whether miracles were worth trusting without understanding their origins. Martha raised her voice, fueled by both passion and dread. "We can't ignore the darkness that lingers around him. Look at what happened to other towns. Are we ready to gamble our lives and futures on blind faith?" The atmosphere grew tense as conflicting emotions swirled through the air like a storm brewing on the horizon. While many remained enchanted by the preacher's promises, others were haunted by what they had lost and what they might lose again. As she surveyed her neighbors, faces etched with a mixture of hope and fear, Martha felt the weight of responsibility settle upon her shoulders like an anchor. She knew that acceptance of these miracles came with risks they could not fully comprehend. It could mean unwittingly sealing their doom or sacrificing their remaining humanity in pursuit of salvation. With her heart pounding, Martha resolved to take action. She would unite those willing to seek the truth and confront the preacher once more, not just for her sake but for all who called this town home. What lay ahead would demand courage and conviction. The cost of any salvation would not only be measured in miracles, but also in the integrity of their souls. The night air crackled with anticipation as they clung to their beliefs, standing on the brink of a decision that could irrevocably alter their lives forever. The tension in the air was electric as the townsfolk gathered once more at the church, their faces painted with a mixture of excitement and dread. What had started as miraculous events, the return of cattle and crops sprouting from barren land, suddenly shifted into something more sinister when a dark omen appeared. The sky, once clear and hopeful, became shrouded in swirling black clouds, casting a pall over the town that sent shivers down spines. As the preacher stood on the makeshift pulpit, his voice resonated through the crowd. "You have witnessed God's blessings," he proclaimed, arms raised dramatically. "But to keep these gifts, we must prove our faith." Whispers fluttered like startled birds among the villagers, anxiety mixed with curiosity. A heavy ultimatum loomed over them. What would they be required to give? Martha's heart raced as she pushed through the gathering throng to confront him. "What do you mean by proving our faith? What are you asking us to sacrifice?" The earnestness in her voice pierced through the murmurs and directed attention toward her. His eyes darkened momentarily before he responded, seemingly unfazed by her challenge. "Faith requires commitment," he replied cryptically. "A binding prayer must be made where we uplift our village and offer something back, a token of gratitude." Questions began to arise among the townspeople. They exchanged wary glances. Was this a test of devotion or a snare woven into a tapestry of false hope? Clara's hesitant voice emerged from the crowd, trembling yet firm. "And what if we refuse? What will happen to us then?" The preacher's gaze flickered with frustration before he pressed on. "Without faith, these blessings will surely fade. I can feel dark forces lurking at our doorstep. Do you wish for them to reclaim what has been given?" The community found themselves gripped by indecision, faced with an impossible choice: cling tightly to their newfound gifts or preserve their moral integrity amidst troubling revelations about their benefactor's true intentions. Tension thickened like fog on a still night, enveloping them with uncertainty. Martha recognized the precarious balance before them, the reemergence of a long-forgotten pain coiled within conflicting desires for survival and morality. Would they bend under pressure or stand firm against potential sacrifice? As hearts conflicted and voices raised echoes across the vast space between hope and despair, Martha felt overwhelmed yet resolute. If she wanted to protect what remained of their community's humanity and root out potential malevolence, she would have to confront not just the preacher, but also her neighbors who wrestled silently alongside her. The precariousness of their situation deepened as they collectively stood on the brink of decisions that could either forge their destinies anew or lead them down an irrevocable path toward darkness. In the aftermath of the preacher's departure, a heavy silence enveloped the town. The miraculous blessings that had sparked hope now seemed like phantoms haunting the villagers, leaving a bittersweet residue in their hearts. With the threat of sacrifice looming over them and their faith shaken, many struggled to reconcile what they had gained with the price they were asked to pay. Martha Hughes stood outside her empty home, her heart reflecting the turmoil within her community. In the wake of revelations about the preacher's troubled past and the potential darkness he had invited into their lives, she felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The weight of her grief for her lost children still clung to her, but now there was a flicker of acceptance beginning to emerge. Familiar memories danced in her mind, laughter filling the air, innocent dreams intertwined with love, and she understood that while loss was profound, it could also serve as a foundation for resilience. During those long days that followed, Martha took it upon herself to foster unity among those who felt disenfranchised by the preacher's demands. They gathered at twilight beneath the vast sky painted with stars, sharing stories and memories as they sought to heal collectively. With each gathering, she found solace in their shared struggles, realizing that hope didn't have to come from external forces, it could sprout from within their tightly knit community. As conversations evolved from skepticism to solidarity, Martha began to feel a renewed sense of purpose. The townsfolk discussed ways to cultivate their own strength rather than waiting for miracles from a distant figure. Together, they committed to revitalizing their land through hard work and collaboration, planting seeds not just in soil but also in one another's hearts. With time and effort, vibrant greens began to reclaim parts of the desolate landscape as crops flourished once again, this time born from their own hands instead of mystical promises. The community transformed into something more profound than mere survival. It became a sanctuary where loss could coalesce with new beginnings. Martha took pride in seeing her neighbors smile again, understanding that acceptance did not mean forgetting, but rather honoring those lost while forging ahead. The scars they all carried would no longer divide them. Instead, they became badges of resilience. In this quiet rebirth, even in grief's shadow, Martha found strength, not only for herself but for an entire community rediscovering its identity amid hardship. As dawn broke over the horizon with renewed light spilling across their fields, she embraced change as a constant companion on this journey toward healing. A journey she knew would continue as long as they stood united against whatever darkness lay ahead. As life began to settle into a new rhythm in the town, the lingering echoes of the preacher's influence sparked deep reflections among the villagers about faith, doubt, and the true nature of miracles. They had witnessed transformations like returning cattle and fruitful crops, but at what cost? The question weighed heavily on their hearts as they wrestled with the duality of their experiences. Martha stood once more in the twilight of her home, gazing at the fields that now offered hope. They were thriving, yet each bloom reminded her of the struggle to reconcile their miraculous rebirth with the sacrifices implied by the preacher. Conversations around town often turned toward those very revelations, the notion that faith could demand more than simple trust, that sometimes salvation required individuals to confront their darkest fears, questioning whether the blessings were a gift or a curse. At community gatherings, discussions danced on the edge of skepticism and belief. Some felt invigorated by their own resilience, believing they had reclaimed power over their destinies. Others were haunted by uncertainty, wondering if dwelling in that faith left them vulnerable to forces beyond comprehension. Whispers of caution began to spread like wildfire, highlighting potential pitfalls of veering too close to blind belief while neglecting their own moral compass. As Martha engaged with her neighbors, she found herself sharing wisdom shaped by grief and acceptance. She recounted moments where disappointment and heartache had turned into deeper understanding and connection. "We must cultivate our hope carefully," she urged them. "It cannot be rooted in fear or obligation." Yet beneath her encouraging words lay an acknowledgement of pain, an understanding that loss is often intertwined with growth. A myriad of emotions surfaced, revealing how intricately they were woven into the fabric of communal life, a tapestry marked by scars, yet celebrated for its ability to weave resilience through adversity. In accepting what has been lost, the children's laughter that once filled her home, Martha learned to craft a legacy not solely defined by despair, but rather one infused with strength drawn from shared journeys. As dawn broke over the landscape, sunlight filtering through trees and casting golden rays upon their fields, she felt a profound sense of balance begin to emerge. The legacy left by the preacher lingered in whispers through the town but would not define them. Instead, it served as a reminder that every miracle holds shadows alongside brightness, urging them to remain vigilant in fostering integrity amid hope. Together they would strive for a nuanced understanding of faith, one that embraced both light and dark, a journey built on collective strength as they poised themselves against whatever challenges lay ahead. In doing so, they would honor not only their lost loved ones, but also ensure that future generations would inherit a legacy enriched by both miracles and moral introspection.